Hello, you all. Welcome to In Pursuit of Life with Sabrina. Welcome back, and if it's your first time, welcome. I just wanted to share with you all on this video what I did before I got diagnosed with cancer and why it's so devastating that I'm in the situation that I'm in. And I feel like it will help a lot of people, because it would help me if I were watching someone while I was going through the stuff that I was going through, if I had heard someone talking about this. So I want to hopefully help someone understand that you're not alone in this, okay? Because it really changes our lives a lot of times, the treatments and the aftermath and all the stuff that you find afterwards. As we know, most of us, they said, well, I've heard several times that most people don't die from cancer, they die from the complications of cancer. And the complications of cancer and the treatments can be severe. But, and it can be life-changing. And that's what I am walking through now. July 1st will be 10 years of this. So I wanted to share with you who I was before I found out. Well, I was a divorced mom. I got divorced our divorce was final the day after 9/11. We had three kids. They were 7, 5, and 3. It was not what I wanted. But I was the one who did file because I had to. It was a very toxic, and I'm not saying toxic in the way that people kind of use it just for something uncomfortable. I'm saying it was dangerously toxic. At one point, my doctors were saying my body was, because I started getting I've always not felt good all my life. And I'm going to talk about that in my subsequent videos. And we know now why I didn't feel good, because of the other things, the chronic things that I was dealing with that we didn't know about. But I've never felt good all my life. And so, but the stress from the divorce, and I'd had 3 babies, and 2 of them were very high-risk pregnancies. And one was born 4 weeks early. The second one was born 8 weeks early. And I was 27 when Gabby was born, my third. And that was not my plan. I was going to Baylor and everything, me and my ex-husband. And I was basically told what would have been what the equivalent of junior year going into where I would have to be doing, I would be doing my senior year work and internship. I was basically told I had a choice to make. It was either going to be career or babies. And I'd already had Jordan. And they were not wrong. There were miscarriages. I had endometriosis. That was found when I was 19. And so I've had a lot of medical issues. And endometriosis, if you don't know, it's very, very painful. And they're when little cysts form on your ovaries and they burst. And they would burst like when I would ovulate. And it was excruciating pain. And the only way that I could describe that pain was it was like child labor, but with labor pains, they let up. You have the contraction and it lets up. When a cyst bursts like that, though they called them little chocolate cysts, and every time they would burst, they would spread and grow more cysts. And so, and it would be excruciating pain. It was so excruciating that it was one of the few times that they would let you have a steady supply of hydrocodone and or Vicodin, and I only used it when I had to, and I only used half of one because I didn't want to get addicted. And they happened maybe twice a month, and so that was what it was. That was, and I didn't feel good. I started having muscular type things. I remember the whole left side of my body flared up, and they were thinking that I had some kind of muscular disease, and it was in our family, but I was afraid to get tested. Well, not afraid, I just had wisdom. I knew that my marriage was ending, I had these babies, and if I had gone to Dallas and got tested and they put a name to it, I knew at that time I didn't have the faith to stand against it or to fight it, because I was about to go from being financially stable to not having anything, because at that time, that was just the nature of our relationship. My ex-husband was not going to allow me to walk out being comfortable. And so that's one of the reasons I stayed so long, because that was one of the things the judge asked me. He said, if your relationship was so bad, why'd you stay so long? And I told him, because I knew. that because I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years, and I knew that once I left, I was not going to have anything. And that's exactly what happened. Even though, because I had a choice between child support or alimony. And I don't know why that was, because I was a stay-at-home mom for all those years. And I think, and so, and made less money. So in the state of Texas, I fit for alimony, but I didn't get it. And so my ex-husband did not pay the amount that most people pay for 3 children. He paid way less. And so, but we're different now, but that was back then. I'm not even gonna go into all that. That was another life. We both matured, grown in Christ. We're better. But that was where we were. And my body, I started getting sick, inflammation and stuff. And after I had Gabrielle, I started having heart issues. Now we know it's a congenital heart defect that I had that was popping up. And they were just attributing it to that, really, because Gabrielle was born 2 months early, but I went on bed rest at 5 months because I started trying to have her at 5 months. And so I was having to hold her in. And I also had a 4-year-old and 2-year-old, and I had friends that helped keep them, and they lived down the street, but they were good friends, and that was a blessing because my ex-husband worked as a manager. And so, but after I had Gabby, I really started feeling even worse, and I had extreme pain. I remember, because I've always been small, and small for me, because I was like a size 8, size 10, very toned, because I'm curvy. I have a curvy shape and like an hourglass. And so I worked out and everything. And even when we separated, I started working at a gym, and I was the fittest I'd ever been, and weighed more than you would think because of the muscle. And but that's the way I lived my life. I was always fit. This weight loss came on after the cancer, a couple of years after the cancer and the surgeries, because I've always been healthy. And so, but I started getting really just having extreme pain. And the only way I could describe it was, it was like waking up, like if you had the flu, how you feel with the flu, well, just multiply that by 3 times. And I didn't really have a whole lot of help, but I did know that a bunch of medicines were not good. And I had a cardiologist warn me. He said the medicines they're trying to put you on will shut down your liver and your kidneys over the years. He said you have to think long term, go natural, which was already something was in my heart because I always wanted to be, I was already doing natural stuff. So I started taking some really good supplements, and I became a single mom, was really sick, didn't have enough, was in a lot of pain, so I couldn't work really good jobs. And I didn't want my kids to just be without their mom, because we were going to, to a single household at this time. And so I learned how to get up before 45 minutes or before I had to get up. I would keep some stuff. I forgot, it was really good supplements, and I would take them, and they helped reduce the inflammation. So I would take them before I was supposed to get up, and then I would be able to get up. And I rarely took pain medicine, but when it was really bad, I would have to take pain medicine, and I would repeat. And I took a lot of vitamin C, with vitamin B, just a lot of good vitamins to help me, but I was still in pain, you all. And people knew not to hug me. It wasn't that I didn't want to be hugged or want to be touched. My body hurt. And that went on for years. And, but because I was a mom, I was active. I went to work. I chose to work as a waitress. I was working for the city of Waco with children's services and stuff like that, but it was a lot of mess going on. I mean, a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing. I didn't fit in because I was a Christian, and I was really trying to live for God, and I wasn't, and I was trying to grow in this new season. And we ended up getting divorced the day after 9/11. We were preparing to go to court because my ex-husband was going to fight me on everything. And but 9/11 happened, and the Lord spoke to his heart. People are dying, and you're fighting over this. So he signed the papers. Praise God. And so so now we were in a house. We were able to have peace. So I had these kids. I was a single mom. Chose to go work as a waitress at Olive Garden because they needed daytime waitresses. Only Monday through Friday, which is what I needed. And so I would go in and work. And, and the thing about working as a waitress at a place like that, you can always pick up shifts when you need to. So when the kids would go with their dad and I needed extra money, I could pick up shifts. And so it enabled me to make pretty good money because I was an adequate waitress. The second day on the floor, my second day on the floor, I got a $115 tip, you all. And that would happen occasionally because I was a good waitress. And then I ended up getting people who really wanted to have me wait on them, especially because I was quick. I was quick, but I was at their pace. And I wouldn't go into being a at that time because the people that were managing at the time were not good, because I was also going to church. I was serving in church. I was also growing my leadership skills because I knew that I was a leader and I was serving. So I was growing and I was reading leadership books. So I knew good leadership, and I was not working for good leadership at that time. So I wouldn't do anything more except go to work and do what I need to do and go home. And I wouldn't sometimes do a lot of the extra stuff that they would do because it wasn't a good environment. And I was ostracized because I was a Christian and a mother and didn't work weekends and put my children out. In fact, I had other people whose children were completely messed up as adults ostracize me and ridicule me because I chose to work and to be off on Sundays and to be off on Fridays so I could be at my kids' events and in the evenings and not go after the money. I put those kids first. So I mean, I had a little less money, but they were important to me. But you all, I became PTA president. And not just PTA president, I was PTA president for 1 year, and then the whole council over all the PTAs. You know, we would have these meetings once a month. I would go. I was one of the only PTA presidents that showed up every month. And because I found that to be very important. And so, and they would have these meetings and they would cater them and everything. And so I, after being consistent, they needed a new president. They asked me because I was the only one who showed up all the time. So I became the Waco City Council of PTA's president. And you all, the way God worked that is, I was a single mom, but because my ex-husband was involved in the kids' life, they didn't know we were divorced. They thought I was married. And so I served for 2 years. I think it was the second year that they figured out I was single. They had no idea. And I did a pretty good job. And I was all the time, I was at all the events with the kids. Sometimes we'd have to split it up. My mom would have to show up at something, or my husband, because we had 3 kids that were very active. They were also very active in church. I made sure that they went to camp and they served in church and did, like as junior leaders, they would help out in nursery. They chose where they wanted to help and things like that. And so we were serving together growing up, and I was in excruciating pain, you all, but I was pushing through. And the lump, okay, I'm gonna show you all right here. That's the scar. Let's see if I can see it. That's the scar where they removed the cancer. The lumps showed up, I guess I was about 32. And I didn't know what it was, and it would itch and everything. And it didn't really concern me. And I would go to the doctor sometimes and I would ask them about the lump, and they would say, oh, well, you're too young to have breast cancer. Now I had dense breast, and it was known that people with dense breasts have more of a chance of getting breast cancer, but I was just kind of being pushed off. But I was in excruciating pain and just dealing with all of that. Finally got to where my left side was operating more, but it's interesting because the left side of my body is weaker. So I don't know if I had some kind of stroke event or what happened that never got addressed because I wasn't taken seriously when I went to the doctor. But I continued to raise my kids. And as we got better leadership at Olive Garden, I stepped up. I became a trainer. And because they noticed my leadership skills, they asked me to be a trainer, and they wanted me to go in management, but I said, no, my kids were still home, and my son was on his way to A&M. I had a daughter that was coming after that. She was 2 years behind Jordan, and then my youngest was 2 years behind the middle one. So they were going to be going to college back to back, and so they were wanting me, hey, just saying, hey, you'd make a whole lot more money if you would just go into management. And I said, no, because my kids still need me. Their dad worked a lot. They needed one parent to be available. And I also knew that once they got into college, their first year of college, they were going to need me a lot because I talked to a lot of college parents. And so even through the pain, you all, and sometimes, there were days when I would I guess it happened once every couple of months, I was just down and my body was just hurting so bad, I couldn't go to work. and I would have to just spend a day in bed. And sometimes, and I remember one time I was hurting so bad, and also my stomach, I could feel things rolling around my stomach, and I was almost for certain I had tumors. Something was going on, because I knew I wasn't pregnant, because we had done a, they had tied my tubes and everything, and I wasn't, I wasn't doing anything to get pregnant at that time. And so I knew something was up, and but I couldn't slow down. I was raising the kids, and I knew that was my first priority, and I knew that, and I was just speaking over my body, healing and everything, but just still in pain. But by the way, the Lord did heal me from the endometriosis, in that when they went in to do surgery after Gabrielle, after I'd had the C-section and because she was an emergency C-section, and the tube where they did that, I think it was like a couple of months after that, they did surgery to go in to check on the endometriosis, and they took pictures. It was completely clean. So it was really a miracle. And so even though I was experiencing effects of like endometriosis, it wasn't. Now we know they were tumors, ovarian tumors. And we didn't find those until we found the cancer at 45. So you can see the miracle that God was working. And I was speaking over myself and cursing this group. And they were saying, well, cancer doesn't hurt. This hurt. But it was sitting on the breastbone, you all. And like about 32, it showed up. We didn't find it until 45. And I'm pretty sure that's where all that inflammation was coming from, the ovarian tumors. And I was bleeding very heavily with my periods. The first day was horrible, horrible, horrible bad. Well, so when we did find the cancer and find the thing, my platelets were very, very large and very, very few. And those are all signs of leukemia. And I had done some preliminary testing, and it was showing signs of leukemia, because cancer oncologists are also hematologists. They're blood specialists. So anyway, all to say that I was very active. And when Jordan went to school, every other weekend I'd go get him. And then Bridget went off to college, and it was the same thing. And then it was when Gabrielle was on her way to college that I actually got, that's when I got diagnosed. But even in all of that pain, when I finally did get good management at my job, I didn't become a manager, but I did everything a manager did that I could do, because I had a great GM, and he started training me and letting me read books, and he had a library, so anybody who wanted to grow as a leader could. And I was reading all the books he was reading, and I was growing, and he was showing me different stuff that the managers needed to know. And I had a notebook of different tasks that I did. I not only became the trainer, I became the head trainer, and I ran meetings every other week with all the other trainers, and I developed programs. And they came in, that group of management came in, our Olive Garden was in the bottom, like 5% of all Olive Gardens, guys. We were horrible. And they had fired the GM, and we got another GM, and she just didn't do anything good for a year. And so they got rid of her, and they brought in this guy, and he comes in and fixes Olive Gardens. You all, within 2 years, I helped, and this is what helped my resume. Even though I was not manager on paper, I was doing management work, and I knew that was going to help my resume, because, I was reading a lot of leadership books, and I knew I had a plan. So, and at church, I was growing too. I went to Bible school. I started teaching classes. I was a women's leader. I was a singles leader. I was, and I was training other people to do other things. And so I was growing, and but feeling horrible. And so we took that Olive Garden, back to that, from the bottom 5% within 2.5 years, or I think it's within 2 years, we became the top 5% of all Olive Gardens, you all. We had a party. I got a chance to plan that party, because that's one of the things I did on the side, because being a waitress and a trainer at a restaurant was way below my skill level. But it was what I needed to do to be available for the children. And so I started doing weddings on the side. And people ask me all the time, well, why don't you do them full time? Because it's not fun if it's a job. It was a hobby because I have coordination skills and I have planning skills, which work great for weddings and events. So I started seeing people having trouble with their weddings. So I started offering my services at very, very discounted rates and to help them because I want them to have good weddings. But I did have rules. They had to go to training. They had to go to counseling, and the counselor had to sign off on their marriage before I did their wedding. And I was pretty good at it. Not bragging. I wasn't the best, but compared to them not having anybody, I did an exceptional job. Because they didn't have to worry about anything the day of. I ran it. And so I enjoyed doing that. And I would only do 1 or 2 a year, but I would consult with some people and I charged like $25 an hour for that. And that's how I got through, doing all the extra staff and everything. And that's who I was. I was able to push through the pain, take good supplements and everything. But you all, there's a whole different type of fatigue. I thought I was going to get my treatments. We were going to remove the cancer. My body was going to heal. And I was going to be able to push through whatever. And I'm telling you, after all of that, we removed the tumors, the ovarian tumors. We dealt with the blood issue. God did a miracle on those things. I'm going to talk about that because it's really cool what God did. Even though I had to walk through the breast cancer, that leukemia symptoms, and the ovarian cancer stuff. He did a miracle. And so I learned something that you cannot push your body. And I was told that over and over and over. I'd go to church and they would have a word for me. And they would all say, you need to rest. You need to learn how to rest. Well, I didn't know how to rest because I was raising kids and had to push through. So I was pushing myself to the side. And I'm going to talk about research that they found out now for women with breast cancer and a lot of chronic diseases. We have some of the same characteristics they're finding out. And I fit those characteristics of providing an environment in my body that would increase inflammation, which would lower my immunity. And despite all the good stuff I was taking, it was just not enough for my body to be able to fight off what it needed to fight off. But the cancer was slow growing. So the prayers and what I was doing was working, but it was still growing. And, but I learned something after cancer. There was a different type of fatigue. I ended up in the hospital several times. I didn't stop working. I went back to work as a manager, still going through chemo and was going through radiation afterwards, thinking I would be okay. Because I went through the heavy chemo and I thought, okay, I'll be fine. I didn't realize that it takes 10 to 12 years for your cells to rebuild. I didn't realize the type of chemo I had to take because the chemo was on the move. The cancer was on the move. Was so harsh, and there were long-term side effects, some of which I'm suffering now. I'm alive, and we were able to slow that cancer down and most likely stop it. I have some growths, and we don't know what they are. However, we don't have things just growing all over the body. So it did its job, but there were consequences for it. And because I didn't know, nobody talked about it like I'm talking about it with you, I didn't know to slow down. I thought I could just continue because some people can, because there are over 200 types of cancer, but there's lots of different treatments. Not everybody's getting the types of treatments that I had and was fighting a front battle like I was. And so I was in a different situation. So my last day at my management job, I had to be carried out. Was in the hospital for 4 days, you all. And took 3 months to recover from that before I could work again. And do you think I learned after that? No. I still was trying to be the old Sabrina. Probably was pushing too hard back then too. I was pushing too hard, you all. Putting myself beside, And even after then, many times I was in the ER, many times, because I had overdone it. And finally I realized I gotta rest. I can't keep doing this to myself. And so who I was, and then because I couldn't work the hours I used to, wasn't making the amount of money, the savings that I had, the 401k that I was building, all of that was gone in no time. Ended up having to, after I think I was able to stay in the house I was in for, I was diagnosed in 2015. And I finally had to move in with my mom in 2021, because at that 2020 I couldn't work at all. I was going to school, but I'm going to talk about all that, what happened, because I went back to school and I was so sick all of 2020. Never got COVID. It was other stuff. And lots of strep throat. And just eventually losing more and more stuff, still speaking healing over myself, still taking good supplements. At one point I was vegan until I couldn't do vegan anymore because I needed more protein. I couldn't get enough protein because I couldn't eat enough. I was vegetarian, pescatarian. I cut out beef and pork out of my diet, y'all, for years. I still rarely eat beef and pork because I got used to not eating it. And I've gotten used to not eating a lot of meat. So let's see, today I had a little bit of meat, but mostly I eat a lot of protein and a lot of vegetables. That's what I eat. So that is the difference. That's who I used to be, what I used to could do. Now, because of all the other chronic stuff that's happened, I'm very, very fatigued. And very, very have to watch the brain situation because I've almost really messed my brain up. I'll talk about that later too. But yeah, so that's who I used, that's who I used to be and what I used to be able to do. And I was a growing professional, even on my job. When I was a manager before I got diagnosed, I was on this fast track to become a director, to become a GM and a director, because I wanted to train managers. That's where my skills were. And when I went through training at this job that I had taken over, we're going to Florida, I went through training. I loved it. I wanted to do what they were doing because that's where my skill level was, and that's what I wanted to do. So they were going to help me get there. But then cancer put a wrench in it all because I just don't have the energy. I've learned my limits. And like today, I hit 3 o'clock and I had to go lay down because I'd had a lot of stress. I've had the accident. I mean, just moving my daughter, it's a lot for my body. And but so if you're going through changes and you're not the same person, you can't do what you used to do, you're not alone. Our bodies are healing and everything is going towards the healing. Our systems are working to heal us. It takes 10 to 12 years for the cells to rebuild themselves. And sometimes longer. We have to give our bodies time if you're feeling it. And don't, because I have friends that didn't slow down and they killed themselves, literally killed themselves. And people applaud that. Guys, I don't want to go down that way. I have grandkids now, they're babies, and I have my children, my other two girls. My girls are not even married. My son's married. I want to be around for a long time, and so that meant I had to slow down and give up some things of life that I never thought I would have to give up, but that's just where it is. So that's who I was, and I grieved that person. I grieved that life I loved. I don't even have the energy to do weddings anymore. And but it's part of healing. Well, you all, that's it. Until next time, I just want to encourage you to have courage in trouble, have courage in pain. Everything you've done to move forward is not done in vain. And please subscribe, like, and comment if you're going through some stuff. And share this video with someone that you think might need it. And watch it if you want to. I hope I helped you. Have a great day. Until next time, you all.